on the next Reporters Roundtable.
Tell me statistically, do you see a decrease in your senior population over the past 3 or 4 years or past 5 years, or is that number maintained?
I think what you end up having when you try to do that kind of taxation is you have disincentive for people to come here.
Welcome to Reporters Roundtable. I'm your host, Denise Rollard Barnes, publisher of the Washington Informer. Joining me at the roundtable, Deborah Simmons of the Washington Times.
As always, thanks, Denise.
Hamil Harris of the Washington Post. And Julianne Malveaux, syndicated columnist.
Always a pleasure.
Good to have you, and welcome to the show. The month of May is Older Americans Month. The Office on Aging has many events planned for senior citizens around the city. And joining us to talk about those events is Veronica Pace, Executive Director of the Office on Aging for the District of Columbia. Pace is a native Washingtonian who has more than 30 years of public service. Welcome to Reporters Roundtable.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Glad to have you, particularly during this month while we celebrate older Americans. Now, before we go too far into what the program is about and what you all are doing for the month of May, why don't you help us to understand? Some people get nervous when you think, seniors, older Americans. What generation or what population of this community are we talking about?
Well, first let me say that we certainly all are growing older each and every day and every moment that we breathe. And we do want to do that. The alternative is not very attractive, right. And I don't think any of us are too keen on the alternative. So let's grow old and grow old gracefully, as one might say, but more importantly, grow old healthily. When you talk about an older person, when you talk about a senior citizen, when you talk about our elders, which is a revered term, you're talking about anyone who is 60 years of age and older. We use the definition of the Older Americans Act. Now, some people think it's 65 or 62 because they have a Medicare, Social Security, absolutely. But the definitive age is 65 years of age and older. And for employment purposes, if you're looking for employment, it's 55. And we all know that ARP has moved to age 50, and that's because they're trying to reach and target and build their network around a younger group that is surely to age.
When you say ARP, you're talking about AARP?
That is correct.
Acronym
AARP. It used to be American Association of Retired Persons, but they have taken on a new image, and so they prefer to be called ARP.
Well, one of the benefits I know is that, with aging is which we didn't get, we used to get a long time ago when we were teenagers, is the discounts, airline discounts, food discounts, discounts for rental cars, all of that. I mean, and I'm waiting. I do have my honorary AARP membership, so I'm trying to get some of those benefits now.
And you still get some of them. You get them in the family restaurants, and you get them on special days, shopping days, even here in Washington, D.C. and in the metro area. What you're also seeing is what is indeed a longevity revolution, because you've got more older people. The population, in terms of just sheer numbers, you've got more people growing older than you will have younger people coming into the world. And that is universal, that is certainly national, and it's here in terms of locally. We have in the District of Columbia, using the 60 years of age and older again, 90,000 people who then are senior citizens. Now, the fastest growing segment of our population are those who are 70 plus, especially 75. It is interesting because then when you start looking at impact on social services, impact on local economy, who are going to be your people that are going to be most in need, that are going to be the biggest users of some of your heavy care resources. Then you're talking about people who are aging and who with age become frailer or need assistance with 2 or more activities of daily living. A lot of what we take for granted, just being able to bathe yourself, being able to walk to the store, being able to climb stairs, being able to do some lifting, make your own bed. And we have a number of individuals who by the time they reach 80s, 90s, and even some younger who are no longer able to do that. And then these are your people who are going to need some kind of assistance. Well, if you look at what's happening to families, if we were raised in a cocoon of an extended family. And the more urbanized we become, the more technology savvy we become, the more mobile we become, there's that less cohesiveness and around the family unit. So then who then is going to begin to provide this care and help assist? But that's on one end, because I want to talk today too about the stereotypes about aging, because we've been working long and hard to change the stereotypes. A senior now is you, and you.
Let me draw a line. Let me draw the line right here.
And that's no, and that's good. No, and that, and that's good. And that's good news. And let me tell you why. Because your earlier question was, who is this population? So then you're talking about people anywhere from 60 to 106. That is your widest cohort, your widest span of individuals in the.
But hold on. Let me stop you and ask you something. I mean, because you said there were 90,000.
Yes, in the District of Columbia.
From an economic standpoint, I actually find that number very alarming. The district has a population of something under 600,000, or 580, something like that. So we're talking, nearly 15% of the population. Do you know where that stands in nationally in terms of cities? Because cities typically are older and younger, blacker and browner, and poorer than the rest of America. Now that's changing a little bit, but what that suggests is that large of an aging population places a tax burden, and we constantly talk about the district's tax situation, basically on the city. Where do we stand on the continuum?
If you look at in terms of who will be your users, say, of Medicaid, where the city puts in dollars and the federal government puts in dollars too, then you're talking about your older population, and you're talking about your frail elderly. And that's going to certainly hold true here in the District of Columbia. It's going to hold true elsewhere. When you talk about your users of home care services, you're going to see the same thing. But the good news is that when we talk about 60, you're no longer talking about seniors who, when you were a little girl and I was a little girl, well, you might not have been, you're still a little girl yet from what you said. Yeah, okay.
Even at thought.
But what I mean is that, we saw 60 as being old, and you had an image of older people sitting on a front porch in a rocking chair. Yes, and with the whip. Yes, exactly. And that has always been the image. And we still have seniors who would fit that image. And that's fine. That's wonderful. But you have so many more seniors, and that's why I said, who you aren't going to be able to tell much difference between you and you. Because they're moving and grooving.
Let's talk about the moving and grooving in D.C. Because, see, one thing we need to be clear. In the 60s, there was a whole generation of people that came to this, civil rights activists, people who came to this town to take names and to do some stuff. Okay, now this generation now is moving into this senior population of the 60s. Now what I understand, what I thought, and a lot of these people are moving back down south. They're leaving the city in droves. And I've heard, now tell me statistically, do you see a decreasing in senior population over the past 3 or 4 years or past 5 years, or is that number maintaining? Because that, to me, is very interesting. Because these are not just somebody sitting on the porch. These are folks who were the pillars that built this town, who really gave D.C. a face. So what are the numbers showing? Are they leaving or are they staying?
If you look at the 2000 census and you compare that with 10 years ago and even earlier than that, you are going to see a decrease, because you're going to see a reduction from perhaps 103,000 down to the 90,000. But you're going to see an increase in the old category. Now, you're going to, if you look at, well, where did that decrease occur, in what areas? You are talking about some individuals who are early 60s, people who are able to move and relocate because they now want to be in Florida where there's warmer climate. They want to be where they feel that they can maximize their fixed income or whatever their resources are. They may be moving back with children or family or relatives. having come from someplace else to Washington, D.C. many years ago.
I mean, our city population has declined in general. So the question really was, I mean, so we would expect,
Exactly.
we've seen it in our school enrollment, that we have fewer children enrolled in school. We see it in our neighborhoods in terms of empty buildings. Would the senior decline be disproportionate to the decline in other parts of the population?
And if I can just tag on to that, even with the decline, how has that impacted your budget? With the numbers going down or your budget numbers going down, is the city still being as responsive monetarily to the needs of seniors as it relates to
the city has been responsive and is responsive, and in terms of that decrease again in the population, what we're seeing is that these are not your seniors who are fixed, stayed in place seniors. They have remained, which relates to what you're talking about. These are the seniors that generally could afford to be elsewhere. And the other thing we have seen is that seniors will move to get a house that is on one floor. They will move, and you don't always have that in cities. Seniors will move for affordable assisted living. And if there's one area that we must work on and put some real emphasis on, that would be one in terms of affordable assisted living, so that you don't have to cross the line.
Because that's where they all being built. Let's just be real.
Right.
It's amazing in Prince George's County. All these senior assisted living facilities almost look like glorified hotels. I want to go in some of these places, okay? And I don't see that being built. Okay, let's. You can come too. Okay.
And the other thing is that as this population grows older, and how is the influence of them as voters and stakeholders in the city, and quite frankly your influence with the mayor and the council on things like economic development and the types of housing that is built. There is a large cry out there right now from Adrian Fenty's and others about getting affordable housing for working families. But what about affordable housing for senior citizens who are perhaps buying down for the second time or perhaps third time in their lifetimes?
Well, there is a need for housing across the board for a lot of groups, you know, not just elderly people, but certainly it's in the affordable assisted living. And it's also in controls on rent and escalating taxes and those kinds of issues, simply because now you're talking about people whose potential for earnings is not necessarily going to increase. If anything, it's going to be less because of retirement and because of fixed income. And that is an issue. But I do want to answer your question in terms of the responsiveness of the city, because I can certainly say, and I do know, that Mayor Williams and the council have been very supportive of Aging's budget. We did not receive any cut in our budget, and in fact, Mayor Williams restored $1 million to our budget that was cut under the control board.
Well, I'm sure Mama Williams made sure that happened too as well. So we're glad, because she's a true advocate for it.
The seniors are empowered, and they are your stakeholders. I wish you could have been with us yesterday, and you would have seen the Mini Commission on Aging empowered.
Take a quick break. We want to talk when we come back about the facility that opened recently, as well as some questions that we might have with regards to those of us who are not aging, but we have aging families in our communities, and we want to talk about how to make sure that they get the services that you're providing. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more with Veronica Pace, Executive Director of the Office on Aging.
I helped turn my child's public school into a whole new kind of school. One with a curriculum that really motivates kids. One that has extended hours, 6 days a week, year-round. With loads of academic, cultural, and recreational activities. One that has support services like medical and dental right there. A school where parents' involvement is encouraged, where teachers have more time to teach, and students are excited about learning. There's just one problem. My child doesn't ever want to come home. You can help turn your school into a community school for excellence. Find out how. Call 1-877-LOVE-TO-LEARN.
Mrs. Abruzzo, I'm here with the Neighborhood Watch.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, no. I'm signing up people for the Neighborhood Watch.
You made our dreams come true. You have your cameras here? Where are you going, Mr. McMahon?
I'm going to check with the lady next door.
Are you going to get the check?
Start a Neighborhood Watch. It's just one of the many ways you can help make America stronger. To find out how, call or log on for this free guide.
Welcome back to Reporters Roundtable. We're continuing our discussion with Veronica Pace, Executive Director of the Office on Aging. Before we left, you talked about the fact that the mayor added, I guess, what was the amount? $1 million to your,
$1 million
to your budget,
operating budget.
which is good. And so that also means that you're able to keep the kind of programs that you're accustomed to giving, maybe even more. And let's talk about this, since this is Older Americans Month, to talk about, one, your office, but also specifically what programs you're all offering for seniors this month.
We let me also say that tell people all the time, we don't have any problems or issues that money, would not take care of. So anybody that wants to endow or wants to make a donation, we could use it and it would be well spent. The council always, authorizes when the mayor proposes the budget, and we get a great deal of support from both entities. This month, which is Old Americans Month, it's celebrated nationally. And we do likewise here in the District of Columbia, because I am the state agency director for the District of Columbia. And what it means is that it gives us an opportunity to honor our elders, older people, to see them as a resource as well as a responsibility. And I say that because we talked so much in the earlier segment about responsibilities, but to also see them as a resource. And we do have a number of seniors that are volunteering, even in their 80s and 90s, and doing wonderful things as foster grandparents, as companions to other seniors, as volunteers at schools. Exactly. And many of them are working. You will see them in McDonald's, you will see them in executive offices, you will see them in corporate structures, you will see them everywhere.
So
and that's again why I'd say, and then with our programs in terms of the month of May, we kicked off Older Americans Month yesterday, and I wish you had been with us at our wonderful ribbon cutting and launching of the new Congress Heights Senior Wellness Center.
Right.
And, it was very dark yesterday morning, about 7 in the morning, but we were not going to council. And the reason we were not going to cancel the event is because it does not matter. We are always blessed. The sun always comes out on any senior event that we do. It just does.
You see what we have to look forward to?
Whether you're at Freedom Plaza or where
It just does. And I say that also because we knew that the seniors would be there. And they were. On time and in full force and fully empowered. And everything that we do, when we launch anything, when we create a program, when we have an event, it is always about empowering seniors and seeing them as a resource. It's about information, but it's about lifting them up,
This wellness center, that's good. Tell me about people who may not know about the wellness center. How many wellness centers are there in the city? And what about people who have their parents at home, they're trying to work, they're trying to take care of their parents, and they're looking for opportunities to have their loved ones go somewhere during the day, and they may not have this access to.
I'm gonna
tell them
this
about
question.
what we're gonna do this month,
Thank
where
you,
they
thank
can
you.
all
Okay.
come.
Perfect segue. See there?
Caregivers can come too. And to get to your point, the 19th through the 25th, by the way, is when we celebrate Show You Care Week. Now, we should show we care 365 days all the time. But this is a special emphasis, and especially on caregivers. And we invite you, Hamil, and everybody else to give a caregiver of an elderly person some respite on that day. because many times they don't. It's always usually one person in a family, one person
Where
in
can
a
we go? Where we
neighborhood
gonna go
and where you're going to go since you. Yeah,
You gonna be there.
since you missed the event on yesterday, you have an opportunity on Monday to join us with certainly Tommy Thompson of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the secretary there, at a walk. You know, a walk about fitness and to highlight the issue of osteoporosis. You know, we're going to do that, and we're going to meet in front of the Humphrey Building and sign up at 11 o'clock, and we're going to do a 30-minute walk on the
And where's the
mall.
Humphrey Building for people who watch? The Humphrey Building is located on Independence Avenue, right?
Tell them about
It's
it.
Independence Avenue by the U.S. Capitol on the mall.
Between the Capitol
Between the
and
Capitol.
Air
Across the
Space
airspace
That's
from
going to
there.
be Monday. This coming Monday. Monday the 6th. And then and then on May the 9th, we're going to have a caregivers fair. That answers your question as well.
caregivers
And that's
fair
going to
where?
be at 1 Judiciary Square, and we know where that is. All of those who have to come down to the DMV, it's the building right across from there. It's
Metro
directly
stop's
on
right
the Metro
there.
stop. That's right, Judiciary Square Metro stop, and it's going to be in the lobby, and it will be going on from 10 to 3, plenty of time for everyone to please come. And to get all of the information you want to know about upcoming events, about nutrition sites that we have across the city, about all of the wellness programs. We do have 3, in fact. The senior centers, we have 15 across the city. We serve over 1 million meals a year
How's that going,
to
Meals
older
on Wheels?
people.
I always remember that when my
It's not
grandma-
Meals
It's
on
not
Wheels.
Meals on
We
Wheels.
serve homebound meals and we serve congregate meals in a group setting, and they're wonderful meals.
What's the phone
They're
number if somebody want to
nutrition,
get a meal like that?
7245622. You should call if you want more information, or 7245626. And we want seniors to be healthy, we want them to be well, and we guarantee that we will meet, if you come and you dine with us, we will meet 1/3 of the required nutrient value for the day at our nutrition sites and with our meals. You know? And it tastes good too. And let me tell you about Senior Olympics
Yeah,
too,
I love that.
because
I love
that's
the Senior
May the
Olympics.
14th through the 17th,
right.
and we co-sponsor Senior Olympics with the DC Department of Parks and Recreation. And many people don't realize that there is a partnership between DC Rec and the DC Office on Aging. And we don't have to do it all, and we don't always have to have the lead on everything. So we work collaboratively with other agencies. We have an enormous senior service network made up of nonprofits that support us in delivering services to seniors.
So the Olympics include, I know they include swimming, some track and
Yes,
field.
yes,
What are some of the
yes.
other activities?
Track, field, swimming,
Right.
the hoops, a lot of things.
Yeah, yes,
and
yeah.
yes. In fact, we have some
Right.
very talented seniors that have won when they have represented Washington, D.C. elsewhere in the country
Exactly.
in terms of their Olympic achievements. And throughout the month, there will be something going on. On the 29th of May, for example, we will celebrate Fitness Day and Wellness Day in our wellness centers in Ward 5 and 7. We do have one there. And we do have one in 7 on Alabama Avenue. Yes, exactly.
These are
You
ongoing
have so
programs.
many things going on. Is there some kind of a calendar
There
or
is
something
a
that people can?
calendar, and I believe you have it. They can certainly go to the website at www.dcoa.dc.gov. But others, please, anytime, call 724-5626. We're here to serve.
Now, when do you name Miss Senior DC? When is
Oh,
that
yeah.
pageant held? Because you
The
have
pageant,
a wonderful
yeah,
group
it's
of
not,
ladies.
the pageant is not held during
month of
May.
May, okay.
That's right. We have events all year long. And again, people can call the Office on Aging. And by the way, they're looking for candidates.
Now, the Miss
I know
Senior
they
DC, is the age limit is younger, though, right? It's not 60, because I've seen some of these Miss Senior DC, and these sisters got it going on. Can you be 55 to be
No,
Miss Senior DC?
no. And in
That
fact,
woman wasn't.
Why are you going to these things hitting on these old ladies?
I'm not hitting nobody. I'm just covering the story. And I saw Miss Senior DC, and I thought she told me she was a certain age, but maybe I was wrong. But anyway, you
The
know.
oldest sister just looked good.
She just looks
long as she's over 60, and they are fabulous.
They are.
And they're like ambassadors. They travel. They do shows at nursing homes, at daycare centers.
Very
They're
talented.
all over, very, very talented.
yeah.
The other question is I think about it when Julianne was asking about the population. Have you seen an increase in the population of centenarians in the district?
Who's the
We
oldest
do.
person in
Yeah.
this town?
Who is the oldest person?
We know, we've been able to identify over the last couple of years about 100 people who are centenarians, and we honor our centenarians once a year.
Right.
And you know, each day someone will be turning 100. We also lose some that don't make it throughout the year. The oldest, I believe, is 106 now. And again, when you're looking at the range of abilities and ranges of independence and capacity, we have one centenarian who still bowls, still wears her high heels. We have them that are pretty much able to still live by themselves with some support. Others have to be in a nursing home or an assisted living facility where they need more support and care. But those that want to come, and we honor them, and we're just thrilled to do so.
Being in housing counseling, because sometimes I hear about people, the elderly being forced from their homes. You always hear about that with gentrification, no issue. But is there any program to counsel with the seniors about when they still want to live at home, but they may be hassled by lenders or hassled by realtors want to buy their homes?
Predatory lenders, of course.
lenders.
I mean, we know how they
Right.
work, but maybe the question might be we know that elderly abuse, the rates of that are a little bit higher, of course, and if we can't eradicate it altogether, then we'd like there to be. Do you think a hotline needs to be set up, or for seniors who are living alone, but perhaps have somebody come in 2 or 3 times a week to help them cook, do laundry, and things of that nature? Particularly, we know the prostitutes
Well,
are
for
sort of
services,
like.
that hotline is 724-5626. You call the Office on Aging. It's called One Stop Shopping, and then you let us. We let us help you understand and negotiate the system. But there is a category of service called assessment case management, and these are your trained, like your mother and like me, professional social workers and trained staff who have expertise in this area of helping people identify what are the signs, what are the key areas, where's support needed, where can you get that support, and what is the best compilation or menu, if you will, of services that is going to help this person stay in their own home, in their own community. There is elder abuse, unfortunately, and I wish it were not so. And we should always distinguish between what is defined as neglect and then what borders on what may be even criminal activity. Yes, there is and has been predatory lending. We fund, in fact, legal counsel for the elderly, which is a part of ARP's program to support and help seniors. And oftentimes they have been successful in helping seniors retain their homes and, avoiding foreclosure. It is pernicious.
That's happening, and I'm glad you raised it because it seems that these folks actually target the elderly.
That's
And
right.
you look at the fine print. Someone has a house where the steps are crumbling, and they say you can get these steps fixed for a little or nothing. And next thing you know,
You have a balloon mortgage that
That's
puts
right.
everything and
Well,
takes
it's-
in
it's-
areas
And it
that
happens with telemarketing as well, and that is a major initiative for AARP.
It's unfortunate.
And on,
It's
on predatory lending, the mayor proposed and the council did pass some legislation that deals with that, and eventually we hope to even refine it even more. But it is a problem area.
It's unfortunate that we have run out of time because we wanted to make sure we got the information out about the activities for the month.
Well, we
But there's
didn't get them all,
so-
but I
yeah,
know
yeah.
they're going to run it.
Right.
And
Well, it's
all
such
I
a
can
rich
say is
program.
just have me come
Congratulations.
back.
It's really
Thank
good.
you so much. Oh, I haven't told you half the story. And it
I'm
goes
reading
on
over your
every-
shoulder, so I see what you got going on.
But what I will do, since I wasn't able to talk about it all, I'll leave you a calendar of events.
Wonderful.
And you can see this is just for May, but I mean, we have a calendar of events that we publish monthly. And if you look at our
things.
Spotlight on Aging, our own newsletter,
Okay. 2 things, Ms. Pace. The phone number,
724-5622 and 724-5626.
Okay. And lastly, do you have a website?
Yes,
where
we
this
do.
calendar is listed?
dcoa.dc.gov.
dcoa.dc.gov. Very good. Thank you for joining us for
Well,
this
thank
segment
you for
Reporters
having
Roundtable.
me.
Hopefully you'll see us out.
I think that's universal. That you'll
We
be
want to thank us again.
Well, I hope
said
so. I look forward to it.
Veronica Pace for joining us. And up next, parking in the district. How much should you be fined for parking illegally? Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Properly inflating my tires burns less fuel and saves me money on gas. Yeah, I'm saving Mother Nature from pollution, but more importantly, she saved me $11. Ow!
Environmental events. Get green.
By keeping my car regularly tuned, I save money on gas and repairs. That also means cleaner air. You know, feels good to help save the cash, planet.
Environmental events. Get green. For more tips, go to getgreen.com.
Welcome back to Reporters Roundtable. Mayor Anthony Williams is seeking to increase parking fees in the district. Drivers who return to their parking meters, even after a minute after it expired, would have to pay a $35 fine instead of a current $15. Deborah, does this make sense?
This doesn't make sense, and what also doesn't make sense is that the Republicans on the council are going along with this tax, because that's exactly what parking fees are. They're taxes. The only good news in this story is that they were initially going to go up perhaps 250% on various parking violations, and now they're only going up 200%. So we're supposed to be happy about all this. The really, really bad news is that while they're going up on these fines will actually help pay for an additional 100+ parking ticket writers, so that money is being offset by bloating the bureaucracy again with something that is a disincentive for working and living in the district.
The thing about it is, if they're going to increase the parking fines, some of that money needs to go to create parking. I mean, if you live in D.C., what you see is that basically the supply of parking is so much less than the demand that people feel, you know, you double park to run into a store. The FedEx talks about how often they get tickets for delivery and those kinds of things. The district, and I believe it was 1992, the peak year, raised about $18 or $19 million in parking, and they're trying to go up on what they're raising, but that has to be reaccrue to the citizens of the district somehow. This is one of the few municipalities that I visited that has so little municipally sponsored parking.
Not only that, Julianne, but you know, we've lost spaces because we've got this whole segment of the community that's pushed bike paths everywhere. So there's certain places in the city, around Capitol Hill, for instance, where they've actually taken parking spaces away.
But Deborah, I would make it a parking versus bike path thing, though, because that's environmentally sound.
Well, maybe. But it's not environmentally sound. That's the point. It's not environmentally sound when you've taken away these bike paths and you sit there, as I did, for an hour and a half one day to see who's using the bike path, and nobody's
but
there.
Let's be clear. We know that Mr. Gandhi, the chief financial officer, whatever, the budget man of the city, said they needed to identify some new money. You remember that? You remember he talked about the commuter tax and all that. It's not going to fly. Well, guess what? We just have a commuter tax, call it parking tax. And the bottom line is, if you look at what the mayor initially proposed, like I think it was $45 for that $15 ticket, then the compromise was found in the council. The bottom line is, this is the way to charge people from the suburbs to work in this city, and this is what it's all about.
It's not a commuter tax; it's a resident tax. Because if you look at you look at various areas where you see. My neighborhood is a perfect example in Logan Circle. You see more people living in certain kinds of housing, and they have cars, but there's no parking for them. So as I said, these are residents of the district. These are not commuters. So it's not a commuter tax.
And it's interesting because to benefit economic development in the district, we don't have to even worry about meters on weekends. Meters are free. Right. So I mean that.
So the commuters are the ones who basically are getting a benefit, but the residents are not. Now, the one thing I would say when I looked at the mayor's proposal, I think we should distinguish between parking meters and simple illegal parking. I mean, because parking meters are one thing, and I think there should be some kind of leniency. But when people are parking in red zones and other things, I would perfectly support raising of those fines, because you do need to have a disincentive for those kind of things.
Not if it's you in your neighborhood. Not if it's you've got your elderly mother, you're trying to get her in the house, come back to get the groceries or whatever, and you come back and you've got a ticket. That's one thing. Yeah, that's a different thing.
Why is that's the only thing that happens efficiently here? I mean,
because it's about getting money. But go back to your issue.
And it's about being run by somebody who doesn't live in the district and have to live by it either. I mean, you think about the fact that you're a council member and a mayor. You can park anywhere you want to and practically drive sometimes at any speed you want to and not have to pay the financial repercussions that we do. That's the other thing.
The bottom line is this is going to hurt the working people trying to make it, single parents, people trying to get in these grocery stores and stuff. The bottom line, you asked about the parking meter and the red zone. The bottom line is there's not enough parking meter spaces in this town, so people are parking in these illegal zones. And what's going to happen is that they're gonna whack the people, the very people who trying to make it, who barely can survive anyway. But look at the big picture. The housing is going up in this town. Now the parking is going up. Eventually, people will see DC as this new Manhattan.
No, I don't think they will.
The wealthy can only afford here, and regular folks got to move.
This is what happens. It was this whole disjointed, disconnected thing that Mrs. Pace just said kind of works well with her agency and other agencies. You had the DC Water and Sewer Authority move down onto 1st Street Northwest across from Union Station. People are coming in to pay their water bills, but there's nowhere to park.
And a long line inside.
Those are the kinds of things that happen.
I will say they have about 4 or 5 spaces right on
the
side. I know, but I do want to say that because I'm going to say, every time I pass to go to water and sewer to pay my bill, I've never had a problem parking. But I understand. But the question in my mind, well, no, I can't go in the middle of the day. I'm just saying that those even though it's not a lot, those little spots that have been made available have been effective. But the question was,
so far as what?
Well, I mean, you can park there. I have never seen on
not
those.
in the middle of the day.
Well, let me say this.
When you're running downtown to pay your water bill on your lunch hour, you can't do it. You can't pay your bill
And that's
online.
the point I was getting ready to make.
You can't pay it over on 8th Street where there was plenty of parking.
My
8th Street
question
Northeast.
was the first time I had to go there to pay a water bill.
Obviously
My
like a
question
very
was, why would they move this office here? Because I thought it was.
Why did they move it east of the Costa River that needs jobs, that needs a place that has land? Why put it downtown?
It's a quality of life issue that really does speak to the. I mean, I think every time I've been here, we've talked about a whole set of quality of life issues in the district. And essentially what we've seen coming out of the mayor's office, frankly, is a focus on quality of life for some segment of the population. Blessedly, it does include seniors, but an ignoring of the quality of life for working families. And the whole issue of how you park, where you park, and what you pay for connects to quality of life.
To go to pay your parking tickets. The place, even where you have to go to pay your parking tickets, is inconvenient, which is around the corner from water and sewer. But where you have to go pay your there's no place to go pay your parking tickets.
So you come back out from paying your parking tickets and buying another ticket.
That's what I'm talking about leadership. See, this is a reactionary council or reactionary government. I don't care if you call me. I don't care. The bottom line is, who's going to think for the citizens? Who's going to say, you know what, this is stupid. This doesn't make sense. Why can't you move this office east end of Costa River? Why can't you have 10 parking spaces? What is it going to take?
Why can't you pay for some of these things online, for example, do some other kinds of things?
It was reported recently that because of the cameras now, the speeding cameras, that speeding in the District of Columbia has gone down.
89.5% or something like that.
So obviously, did you agree that that's been effective?
No,
but Lockheed Martin get
that
all
study
the
did
money.
not say that people were driving slow. They just said they're driving slower where red light camera areas are because we all know where they are now. But we're still having, you look at the number of traffic accidents and that sort of thing, people aren't driving.
So that's
slow.
about money.
They just know there's a camera there, or they now recognize the unmarked car.
Exactly.
When you talk about leadership, I mean, I think we should come back to that from the perspective of this issue of a commuter tax. I mean, I realize that this is a very frustrating situation for leadership in Washington, but it seems to me, again, that the residents of the district are subsidizing much wealthier people in the suburbs in terms of what they're doing.
But I disagree. You talk about the wealthy. We're still assuming that the wealthiest among us live in the suburbs, and that's not true. The wealthiest among us are living in some of these $300,000 or $400,000 houses from Georgetown and upper Northwest. So they don't think
If you find a
people
$300,000 house in Georgetown, would you please call me?
well, I mean, well, even more. I don't even know anymore. What I'm saying is that the folks who are trying to struggle in to get in this town from the suburbs, a lot of times are not your wealthiest people, but your working people. People who are struggling to make it. The folks
I
who
still
get
think the
these
issue of a
parking.
commuter tax is one that we really do need to look at. I think that the reason that the district feels so pressed, and you have Mr. Gandhi constantly looking for new pots of money, is because there are no other pots
But
of
why
money.
can't you economics? Why can't have a business? Why can't take Anacostia or some of these undeveloped properties and build and bring corporations in, or have an amusement park like I've been saying for weeks? We always think we can just tax our way out of into solvency, and that's not the case.
Well, I don't think you can.
Why
I
can't
think
we
that
have
what you end up having,
business, you know?
I think what you end up having when you try to do that kind of taxation is you have disincentive for people to come here. And as you, I mean, I think in the longest of runs, you do look at something like a new Manhattan. And I think you're seeing around the country in a demographic shift in inner cities. Quite frankly, as the population ages, those aging people with means want to live close to everything, and it pushes the other populations out. But, you know, we have not seen, I have not seen, certainly in the district, but certainly in other urban areas, very few areas, you really see the kind of forward thinking that says, let's look further down the line, let's look at, because economic development and economic justice are not the same thing. So oftentimes when people talk about, in terms of economic development, let's just slap something up here and the people will come. That doesn't work that way.
We will be having the Deputy Mayor for Economic Development hopefully on the show real soon. But one of the things when you talk about Anacostia is the Anacostia Waterfront Initiative, which is touted to bring a lot of economic development to both sides of the Anacostia River.
Right.
The question which comes to mind with what Julianne is saying is that what we see happening in downtown Washington and Connecticut Avenue and other areas may end up happening as well in Anacostia, where people have people have not really had to worry about parking meters and increased taxes on their homes and all that. But with that economic development, that's going to come to Anacostia. So how do we make sure that the community is prepared for that without being pushed out?
You have community leaders who speak up and start talking and bring stuff to the table and not just stand up and talk off the top of their heads. The reactionary. Give me a plan. Put a plan out there.
You have to make sure that people who are existing residents, especially in a place like Anacostia, are indemnified from development. In other words, if you see taxes going up in an area, you want to make sure that the seniors who live there, that the long-term working class residents who live there have some kinds of exemptions. Now, we do have a home ownership exemption, but I think that
we have some other policies and legislation that's been in place because of that, because we raised those issues 3 years ago when we first started hearing it. Exactly.
They need to continually be raised because I think we lose track quite a bit of some of these
We had some consensus, obviously, on the fact that we don't support the mayor's effort to increase these parking fees.
My point is,
and what Hamilton thinks is a compromise by the council. That's no compromise.
No, that's not a compromise. The council, you know, this council cracks me up because they continue to criticize the mayor and then they go along with this program. So this is just grandstanding on their part.
We're going to have to take a break, but we want to ask those of you who are watching the show, if you want to suggest a topic or you have some comments for us, you can email us at reporters.roundtable@dc.gov, or you can write us at 2217 14th Street Northwest, Washington, D.C. 20009. Up next, Reporters' Picks. We'll be right back.
You'd never know it on the battlefield, but nearly half of today's military are National Guard and reservists. However, they can't answer our nation's call without their employer's support. If you're an employer, visit esgr.org and find out how to do your part. After all, their response depends on yours.
Welcome back to Reporters Roundtable, and now it's our Reporters' Picks. Julianne Malveaux, what's your pick?
Well, coming up, I'm really excited that the Southeast Tennis and Learning Center will be doing its first anniversary one-year open house on September. On May 11th. It's from noon to 5. Venus Williams will be there. You know, Cora Berry just deserves so much credit for what she's done with that center. I hope that everyone, all of you have been there. I know you have been. And that people in the audience will come by on the 11th. It's Saturday. Venus is going to be getting a certificate of commendation from Howard University that day. But in the afternoon, she'll be with us. And it's just tremendous. One of the things that we're doing, and I say we because I am the treasurer of the Tennis and Learning Center, that's the one DC thing that I do in terms of the work that I do. But we'll be announcing the winners of who will be a part of what we call the Reebok Academy. Reebok Company will be sponsoring 25 kids from basically Ward 8 in their tennis and learning development. They're going to get lessons. They'll be able to travel to tournaments all over the country. They will be Reebok down in terms of clothing. So Venus, of course, who is an endorser of Reebok, will be there to announce them and to do a clinic with them. And it is just tremendously exciting. And again, as I said, I wish that Cora could be here to say more. She's the expert on the Tennis and Learning Center. But we have taken this thing from basically nothing to a center. It's something that Mayor Williams, one of the things Mayor Williams has done that I'll give him props for after we dissed him on the parking. But it's one of the things that Tony does support because of what it does in Ward 8. And it's just tremendously exciting. What's also exciting is the way the Williams sisters have really been supportive of this. And of course, worked very hard with them. In fact, just came back. Oh, I ain't supposed to say. She went to Hawaii with Oracene for a couple of weeks. And, so they've developed a relationship where they really embrace the center and, by extension, in the District of Columbia.
Well, if I can just say,
it's not just the tennis center, it's the tennis and learning center. And to be able to see the computer, the banks of computers there, and the energy that volunteers and workers and the children themselves are putting into over there, it's really amazing. And again, it's another one of those things where there should be one in each ward of the city.
Absolutely. And there should be a lot more attention. I mean, I wish that there should just be a lot more attention placed on this. I mean, I'd spend a little time over with the kids, and you just see Mrs. Berry with the little bad kids, and they can't play tennis if they don't have grades. And so they'll come in and they'll say, well, Miss Berry, I want to play tennis. She's like, what about your grades? And it's just really funny.
The one that said, is she Miss Berry or Mrs. Berry? I said, sweetie, I don't think she would mind if you called her either.
Look at the big picture. Where that tennis center is located, that whole community is changing. I mean, that 4 Southeast, I mean, all the old blight stuff is boarded up and being torn down, and they're building, Walter Washington State, they're building around there. That's like one of the hottest properties. It's like a big secret, but that's the place to be. I mean, it's
so on the 11th, 801 Mississippi, 12 to 5, and just please come out so that all of the residents of the district can see what's being done there and just how exciting this is. It's really an opportunity, not only for our kids, but really for everyone to really just embrace these young people and let Venus Williams and the others know how much we support what's going on.
Just the last thing on that. I live about 4 blocks away from the tennis center, and I can say amen to everything that you all have said, but it's been a wonderful thing. I mean, you've seen young people out there playing before the center was built, but now that it's there, it's nice to know that young people have a place to come to, and it's always used. Always used. As soon as the weather, actually before the weather broke, people were out there. So, it's something that we've got to support. And, of course, there's a lot that's coming. So there's more for that community. Deborah?
Mine is actually this, the GAO did a report, that's the U.S. Government Accounting Office, did a report that says the city is lagging behind sorely in rebuilding and renovating D.C. public schools. And this is something that I and parents from all across the city worked on very hard to get this plan together to determine which schools would be renovated and which ones would actually be torn down and get entire new school buildings. We put it on a 10-year plan. We decided which schools and which communities and neighborhoods would go first. We put a lot of attention into whether we wanted them to be just houses of education or whether they would be community centers with daycare centers and that sort of thing. And to know that this plan is being stalled because money is not being spent properly and not being monitored, it really angers me. So I think we need to go on notice now to know that rebuilding schools and facilities like that for children are as important as rebuilding some of these office buildings and tearing down and renovating public housing in the city.
Deborah, who dropped the ball? Is it the Department of Education, our school board? Is it the mayor's office? Who dropped the ball
all
here?
Three. The Committee on Education, the mayor's office, and whatever minions he has overseeing that project. And I know that might sound like a never word, but so be it. As well as the Board of Education. As far as I'm concerned, all 3 of them dropped the ball.
So how does this play for you in terms of the election? I mean, we have someone who's shopping for a new school board head and saying maybe Lightfoot should jump into the race. From where you sit, because I know you invested a lot in this particular process, from where do you sit, what should be happening in terms of our elections?
What should be happening is not only should parents get in touch with the principals of their children's particular schools to see where this plan is, but they also need to call the mayor's office at 724-5151, and they need to call the council, 724-8000, and speak to not only their particular council members, but call Kevin Chavis's office to see exactly what he plans to do to make sure these schools are rebuilt.
One other question I wanted to ask also with regards to the Oyster School was one that was built independently
Very
of
quickly.
school, independently, I believe, of city dollars, as a matter of fact. So if there's schools I mean, what were the pros and cons of that? Because I understand the board has some issues about how the Oyster project took place. There's
The
some
board
other
can
offers.
have any issues it wants about how Oyster School was built. The fact of the matter is the school was built. We had parents from all over the city standing in line to get their children enrolled there. So that and Randall Highland School, even as a matter of fact, on Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast, because they pushed up the calendar on that. There was somewhere between $500,000 and $700,000 extra dollars that's been spent to get these schools on the fast track, which was being done because this is an election year. So what happens is excuse me.
You also have the situation with School Without Walls. I understand George Washington University has offered to help to rebuild that school, but the board hasn't come to the table to talk about that. Do you know anything about that situation?
Well, the board, and this is where William Lockridge comes in from Ward 8, who's in charge of facilities. If you find out...
District 4.
Excuse me?
District
I'm
4.
sorry. Well, he lives in Ward 8,
Right,
and
okay.
he's the school board rep for District 4 now. But he's also the chairman of the facilities panel on the D.C. School Board. And that's exactly what I'm saying. How can he have problems with that? Shouldn't it be us, the parents, and the other taxpayers should be having the problems and not necessarily a particular board member?
This is an example of chickens come home to roost. Ms. Deborah, who was complaining about schools, was a leading proponent of the change of the old elected school board, and I will never let you forget it, as much as I love you. But the bottom line is that, we thought life was going to get better when we got this new mix of appointed school board.
No, we didn't.
You the main one. But you the one, you said at this table, and the main one, let me make my point, and you the one was pushing
Make your
for
point
change.
and then give your
And
pick.
my point is that when you lose elected representation, by however you want to call it, then you're going to have politics by appointment. And that's what we're dealing with now. And that's why some people in some parts of this town get special things and other folks get thrown to the curb because it's politics by appointment and not representation. You can call it for what you want.
Camille, your pick.
Medical stuff. Ronnie Pugh is still in trouble. And it comes to a point where it's either time to leave or time to go. I mean, he's a nice guy, or whatever. I mean, I'm tired of this resume stuff. We're moving in the summer. Dr. Ivan Watson said goodbye. He's going off to write about anthrax or whatever he's going to do now. He's done a great work. I mean, we're glad that he really was on the front line of the whole situation with the postal workers, but there's still a lot of serious medical issues in this town. The future, DC General, people know if it's open or closed, but the new kind of reconfigured Greater Southeast Hospital is still an issue about the ER and the ICU units. And then now you got Ronnie Pugh, and we're going into summer where we know the Knife and Gun Club is about to kick up, and he's still worried about his resume. So the bottom line is that, there's a lot of medical issues in this town.
Is he worried about his resume, or
Well,
is the
he's
city
worried about
No,
ours.
but you know what? It's very coincidental, confusing, something that you have someone who was elected mayor because their quality that they bring to the table. And we have had how many resume scandals? I mean, we had a guy from the Department of Recreation who prevaricated on his resume. Now we have Ronnie Pugh, the Morehouse graduate who never was. I mean, but this whole thing of resume prevarication is inconsistent with this notion of quality and doing a good job.
That's right. The bottom line is they wanted change. They said anything but Marion Barry. Now they got the change, and now you wonder what you got.
Let me ask this question. In both cases, with regards to the former Recreation Director Newman, now with Chief Pugh, who's been serving now almost 2 years as chief of the fire department. Can he overcome this?
I think it's going to be tough.
It's a resume issue.
I think it's tough now because it's a
record.
credibility issue.
It's a credibility issue that's spun out of control because he did not take responsibility for it early on. He started talking about, well, I didn't create my own resume, somebody else did. I mean, for anyone who's ever done a resume, this just does not ring true. It does not pass the smell test. And here's what ends up happening, Denise. The first time that something, your Knife and Gun Club, that's cute, I'm going to borrow that. But the first time that something goes wrong in terms of fire protection, the first thing people do is go back and look at the resume. He has made himself vulnerable in terms of his ability to deliver quality services.
Exactly.
There's a credibility. I mean, if you want your medical people to be honest, if you're going to die, tell them I'm going to die. If I'm going to live,
the next thing you know,
don't
you're
be
going to have
shucking
doctors
and
who are not
jiving.
doctors.
I know, right? I mean, again, this is too critical.
Well, let me say, if I can just mention something, I have had an opportunity recently to work with the Department of Mental Health. They had their annual Mental Health Day and gave out some awards to some folks, particularly firefighters in the region who, you know, did a tremendous job during 9/11. But I thought the most interesting thing was the fact that they've created these teams of young social workers that go, you saw the Gun and Knife Club, they're preparing for that, for the summer. But they've already been involved in the schools, going into schools, having crisis counseling with young people, because, you know, the teenagers from 14 and older were described as a very angry generation, and some of the responses about 9/11 were very angry responses about the government, about America, about the president, about families, about their parents, about their schools. So having this team of young workers, and I can't remember what the team is called, but I would give them a pat on the back, and the Department of Mental Health a pat on the back for shoring up this group to make sure that they're in the schools on a regular basis to deal with the issues that our young people are facing. So I just wanted to give that.
Hopefully, if young people have jobs this summer, some of that anger can be diffused. I mean, part of the anger of the 14 to 17-year-olds, especially young African Americans, is not seeing where they fit into the system and not seeing how they're connected. And I know that Mayor Berry, when he was mayor, made it a big commitment to make sure youth had jobs. That was one of the things that he did extraordinarily well. And I know that Mayor Williams has attempted to get more volunteer jobs, but really this is some place for the city. Now, I don't mind paying a few more dollars for a parking ticket if it means a young person is going to have a job.
But that's not happened. But I think more importantly what's happened is that you have a lot of teenagers who don't know where they fit into their own families and communities. Because there are a lot of them, who have, whether it's substance abuse in the form of alcoholism or drug abuse, they have to deal with that. They have to deal with trying to do their own studies at feeding themselves, feeding their younger siblings and that sort of thing. So there's a whole lot more that has nothing to do with 9/11 that we need to make sure our young
Let me say,
we're
at the end, folks, and I hate to say that because we always have so much to talk about. But that's it for this edition of Reporters Roundtable. Make sure you tune in to Reporters Roundtable every day at 11 a.m. and 7 p.m. for the latest news around the city.